Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Holy freaking crap. Hi, how you doing there? Peter Griffin from the animated show Family Guy. Now, obviously I'm not a real person, but listen to this. I love this podcast. Cartoon or not, it's the best business podcast around, so do yourself a favor and listen.
Oh, what do you know about business, fat man? You've never done anything in business other than lose money. Giggity, 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 the baby got you there, Peter. I'll tell you right now, sometimes they have some real hot ladies out there. Giggity, giggity, all right.
I listen for the business and the entrepreneurs that are going to benefit my community. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. They should all benefit the community. Oh, shut up, Joe. Tell you what, we'll have you show up if you need to tell us how to get up a flight of stairs in your chair. Probably shouldn't use that in the promo, but you know what? Listen to the podcast.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 star. Ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week on Eggs, we have special guest Adam DeCollibus. Adam is an aspiring author and founder of Third Lion Publishing. He's here to talk to us about literature, the writing process, historical fiction, and the release of his latest novel, Caravan, the story of a man trekking across the desert and the life lessons he learns along the way. So, without any further ado, join me in welcoming our guest, Adam DeCollibus.
Hey Adam, how's it going?
Going good, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for making the time for us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, same.
So the way we came to know you, Adam, and it was actually one of the things that sort of interested the most in talking to you, is you're a pretty young guy, but I think more than anything we respect your hustle. So here you are, a young guy, an author. You're putting out a book, and we'll get into that. We'll talk about all that stuff. But I just kind of wanted to point out the fact that you reached out to us. And had this book to sell and all that, and I think for your age and everything, given your age, I think that's pretty bold move. Like that's pretty cool that you felt like you were in a position to do that. So big shout out to you, kudos. Well done. I think that's a great place to be. So
Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. So before we get any further in this conversation, let's talk a little bit about where you came from, how we got here, and what got you into writing.
Sure. So my life story, to make it short, is I was born and raised in a small town way out in the mountains. And growing up there, about the only thing I was really interested in, like other than my family, was story. I just loved books. I loved movies. And I really felt like I grew up in another generation because there was about 1,100 people in this town. And it was one of those towns where everybody knew everybody, and there's like one street with one brick building, and that's about it. And what really saved me creatively was I grew up watching movies on this VCR. Now, if you're old school, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I would watch, some ancient movies, and most of them wouldn't even have sound. And that's just how I grew up creatively. I would grow up watching these movies, and then as I got older, reading these really interesting books. And the fact that film and books connected me with the past got me extremely interested in history. And those two combined with my love of travel, which just got inspired into me when I got to live a little bit in South America growing up. Those three really got me compelled to write. And writing was something I just did. I did it every day from about the time I was 5 till now. It's just something that I do. I just have a lot of creative juices flowing, and it's a beautiful way for me to express that creative energy. And that's how I got started in writing. When I was 13, I had the original idea for the book Caravan, and that's when I knew, when I had the idea, I knew for sure that it was going to be something special. And I wanted to make it more than just a story. I wanted to make it a book, and I wanted to get it out there so other people could read it.
Sure.
So yeah, that's in short, that's how I got started.
So what were some of the books you enjoyed as a kid that kind of motivated you to start writing?
As a kid, I would say it was the Robin Hood books, and it wasn't the unabridged version, but it was done by some other publisher that shortened them and had pictures and everything. And whenever I would read those books, I just felt like I was in Sherwood Forest, and it was just an awesome experience.
Sure.
And another book as well was The Count of Monte Cristo. I think that's a
great book. Yeah.
Yeah. That story just really resonated with me. I love the idea of retribution and revenge within stories. I think that's a very attractive theme. And so I enjoyed that story a lot more than anything.
Sure. So Caravan is obviously, the finished product. How long did it take for you to get there? How long did you work on it? What was your kind of trajectory starting from, I want to be an author, and now you have the book? Kind of break that down for us.
Well, the story behind Caravan, it's actually a pretty long trajectory. The crazy thing about Caravan is that it was the first story that I'd ever written, the two words that every writer wants to write, which is the end. Up until that point in my life, I'd never finished a story. I'd always have an idea.
Sounds familiar.
And then sure enough, another one would come by and I would hop onto that one. And that's a good base to come from as a writer because you constantly have new ideas. The downside is that none of those ideas ever reach, they never get fulfilled. So when I had the idea for Caravan, I wrote down 6 or 7 pages in one sitting, which is the most I'd ever done in my life at one time. And immediately I knew. It was like love at first sight. I knew it was what I wanted to write. So I took the pages to a friend of mine who I'd been showing all my stories to as early as I could remember. And basically the friend said, listen, I'm not going to read your story. Here's what we're going to do. Promise me you're going to finish it. You're going to sit down and you're going to write it. I don't care what you write. It could be the same 5 pages over and over. Just sit down and write it and then come back to me when it's done and just promise me you'll finish it. And for being that young, I took it pretty seriously. I committed to doing it. There was a lot of ups and downs, but I got a binder, put some paper in it, and over a couple months, I filled out 400 pages of it by hand, and that led to me getting interested in typing it and formatting it and editing it, and it's just been a really fun and interesting process all the way to here.
So you
it took me. Sorry, go ahead.
You hand wrote it and then put it in? Wow.
I hand wrote it, and
if I were to try that, I wouldn't be able to decipher it. I'd have to go back and get some translator to figure out my own handwriting.
You know what? It's interesting. I've always been fascinated by how how your handwriting changes throughout the years, like from the time you're a kid.
Mine hasn't changed. It's still the same. Block letters, and the only thing I do these days is sign for stuff, and even that you can't even read it. So
you'll have the ransom note font.
Yeah. I cut
stuff
stuff out of magazines and paste it when I need to. So, okay, so you wrote it out all by hand, and then how long was that process before you had the words "the end"? Like, was that a year? Or was that?
I think from the time that I had the idea, it was about a year and a half.
Okay.
And
you were 13 at the time that you started, so you were like 14 and a half when you kind of summed it up.
Yeah, I was about 14 and a half when I finished it. and then it took me another 2 years to type it out. Now that one I expanded the hell out of it because the paper manuscript was 400 pages.
Yeah.
But the computer manuscript was, I think it was like right on the nose of 1,000. And off of that, I knew immediately, okay, I've just written something that's awesome, but it's also way too big for anybody to read. So I had to cut it down. And that was in and of itself an interesting experience. So
I'm sure.
Let's see, 2000, I think it was, September 2016, I finished it. The first real big draft. And then it took about 1.5 years to cut it down to, I think it was about 350 pages where it's at now. And then I've been spending about 1.5 years having it edited, having it formatted, and working on the design and learning the ropes of the publishing company.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, did you use an editor? Did you write it yourself? Or, how did that process work? I guess the physical transformation of this document from handwritten self to first draft, second draft. Like, did you have any support along the way? I mean, at 14, 15, it seems like you might still be working on grammar and things like that. So who did you have some people or resources in your family or in your social groups that were able to sort of help you move this thing along?
Believe it or not, no. I just went cold turkey right into it. I knew one close friend who had self-published a nonfiction book through Amazon, and he gave me some pointers on what I should be thinking about and how to outline it and some real basic stuff. But the crossover between fiction to nonfiction, it helped me out a lot. But I really just learned from experience. I just went for it. But of course, there's a lot of podcasts that I listen to and a lot of mentors that I built up that I didn't know directly, but I referenced a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it seems like especially at your age, you'd be, seeking out influence and trying to find people to help you out. So as this book started to progress, where are we at today? Has the book come out yet, or when can people start getting their hands on it?
So the book's going to be coming out here. I can't give you an exact date yet, but it's going to be coming out in about 2.5 weeks is the best date I can give you. Believe it or not, we ran into some technical problems in December right before it's about to come out.
I was going to say, I believe it. I worked in publishing for a long time, so I believe it.
Yeah. And so, as you know, when something like that happens, it takes a while to get it back up to shape. But believe it or not, it's actually a little bit of a blessing wrapped up in a curse. We've actually worked out some, we preemptively worked out some bugs, and it's going to be coming out here in a couple weeks. So that's awesome. Good news.
Well, cool. So let's talk about, a little bit about sort of the marketing plan on this. We talk a lot on this show about creativity and marketing and things like that. What is your plan, or have you put any thought to how you're going to market this thing? So, obviously getting on podcasts is one channel. I assume.
Props for the hustle on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Yeah.
I assume, other modalities would be social media, probably some things like that, Facebook, live streams, maybe some book signings, things like that. Have you put any real thought, though, to what the process is going to be like, what you hope to do, that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been it was funny. Immediately after I finished the very first draft, so back in 2016, I had this mini existential crisis because I felt like, man, okay, I wrote this book. Now, how the hell am I going to market it? And so I've been thinking about this topic a lot. This topic's been one that I put a lot of focus on, a lot of planning into. And the way I'm going to go about it to get it out there the most and just reach a lot of people is, one, I'm going to do podcasts, appear on more shows like this. By the way, I love your guys' show.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
And so more podcasts. I'm going to run some Amazon ads, and I'm going to be, proactive on social media. Once a week, I go live on social media, and I talk about what I've been reading, what I've been listening to, and going to run some ads with a couple other companies that I know of that are they have a good reputation within the publishing industry.
Sure. Well, yeah, because obviously it's a pretty crowded space, so it's important to find your way into it as best you can. Yeah, so let's talk even just a little bit about like sort of the technical business of publishing. So Third Lion Publishing is the name of the company. I guess
is that your company, or is that who you ended up going with to put the book out?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask. Is where what is Third Lion? Is that sort of your publishing company, and what is the modality you're going through here? Like, have you got your own publishing house that you're doing this through, or were you picked up by somebody, or how's that work?
Yeah, so I created Third Line Publishing as my imprint, so that if I wanted to, believe it or not, my original plan was to order 3,000 copies of the book and then sell it through Amazon and sell it through, sell it to other bookstores. And as I did more and more research, I realized, holy cow, okay, that's going to bite me in the butt one day.
Well, at least you did the research, because there's people that have done that and then sits on 2,000 copies of their book in their garage and paying for a storage unit for it. So,
or they just straight up take it to the landfill. And I thought, man, I don't want to go through that. So what I'm going to do for now, until I've got until I have actual numbers to back that up, is I'm just going to go publish on demand. Print on demand, and I'm going to go through Amazon, Ingram, Spark, and Draft to Digital.
What was the second one you said?
Ingram.
Yeah,
Ingram is actually, it's been a minute since I worked in the industry, but at the time I did, Ingram was the largest distribution and publishing channel out there, basically. I'm sure Amazon has circumvented it, but I think, Ingram distributes to Amazon and everybody else. So Ingram's one of the big dogs.
Yeah, Ingram is, man, you're 100% right. Ingram is a big dog. Draft to Digital, and just going to get it out there in a way where it's just going to be published on demand for now.
Well, and that's actually pretty clever to put it across multiple platforms. I've self-published a couple books on Amazon's platform too, so I'm pretty familiar with that. But the one issue I've run into is that I can't distribute the book, for example, at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
Like Barnes & Noble won't take your book if it has an Amazon SKU. And so
I wonder, is that just...
If you have your own ISBN and you publish it under your own ISBN, that's fine. But and I think they'll take it that way. But your pricing's not as good with Amazon and some other things.
So if you were to do like a batch order of like 500 with your own ISBN on it, and then self-fulfillment through Amazon, that would be
you can
way
do
to
that.
circumvent
And so,
that.
but there's struggles with that too. I mean, by doing it on demand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, by doing it on demand, basically your royalty and everything is sort of, you get paid your royalty based on sales and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you have a book and you want to publish and distribute through Amazon, for example, they take a 65% discount no matter what.
Wow.
And so if your book is, $10, they're taking $6.50 of that.
So that barely covers the cost of printing.
You also pay for your own shipping.
Yeah.
So if it costs you another $1.50 or something to ship your book,
so the only way it would make
you're
sense
down to
is
only
if you got like a $15 or
book.
$20.
Right. And by
price
using their platform, you can publish your book. You can they do all the fulfillment and shipping and all that stuff. So I mean, they are eating into your margins a lot. But like we just discussed, you basically
your
don't.
Overhead's less.
Your overhead's low, and you don't end up with a garage full of books.
Sure.
And then of course, it makes sense if you do start selling volume. Then you go ahead and print more traditionally. You go ahead and do it the other way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have...
And, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was going to change the topics. If you have something you want to throw in there real quick, go ahead.
Final thing on that topic of printing costs and the percentage that Amazon takes. It also depends if you go print or if you go ebook, and if you do both. So, if you go ebook, they're pretty much just going to take the percentage for selling it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's actually one of the nice things about Amazon's platform is obviously you have direct access to Kindle. And so they have the Kindle publishing or direct publishing platform. And so it actually works out pretty good.
As in the process of doing that, do you upload a PDF of your book, or is it a text file, or how did they...
There are a couple different options. With Kindle specifically, I believe it's a text file. You might be allowed to do HTML. But, unless you know programming, it's difficult to really style your book that way.
Okay, so you can't really style the actual layout
Yeah,
for the Kindle.
basically, and it's actually kind of funny. Like, it was a step backwards for me. Like, it's actually why our book So my book, just to let you know, Adam, I have a couple like children's books, so they're just illustrated kids books. But like
Awesome.
to publish our book on Kindle, basically we had to upload a bunch of JPEGs. But to get the JPEGs there, we actually had to put them into a Word document, and just sort of set them in there in order,
Weird.
and then the Kindle platform will translate that into something.
What a
But the
pain.
reason is like with a standard book, like something like the novel Caravan that Adam's talking about.
Everyone submits the word.
Well, it's
file.
just type, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there might be some photos that you can put in line along the way, and you have to sort of style them and tag them correctly.
The indenting's all tabular.
Well, because you want to basically take away as much choice or as much decision as you can from the Kindle device, because it's going to reformat you to fit the Kindle.
Oh, true.
And they have a million different devices and a million different shapes and stuff like that. So if you have things that are hard and fast, like this image must be on this page with this caption, like you have to really go through a big exercise in tagging your document. Like,
what a pain.
You have to, tag your headlines, tag your subheads and stuff so that it understands how to translate that onto the Kindle platform. It's weird because it all happens like in a Word document, but it's pretty interesting. It's a complicated process, and like I've laid out a million books for a million people, but it's almost always a really nice InDesign layout, and it's something that we prepare for print. But to go to Kindle actually makes you kind of suck all the technology out of it, and it becomes a
Interesting.
Word doc.
Yeah, that's a pain. So, in your process, when you kind of had the finished product, you might have said this earlier, you went through an editing phase, and then you finished it in the Word, and you just uploaded it to Amazon, and you got your book? Or what was the bug that you ran into recently that was causing problems for you that kind of pushed it back?
Yeah, so the problem was it was actually a computer problem. So I'd had the files. It was the day before I was going to upload them to Amazon. It was right before I was about to do it. And I go there, and my laptop freaks out and blacks out, and files are gone.
Oh, do you have them backed up?
I had them backed up, but being somebody who doesn't back them up every week, they were a little out of date.
So you had to go back and start again.
Yeah, well, I didn't. Good thing is that I didn't have to. Rewrite any content. It was just basic stuff.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're 2.5 weeks out from going live with the book. Can you give us a little backstory? What's it about? What's the storyline? You don't have to give it all away, but get me interested to read it.
Yeah, sure thing. So Caravan is a story about a man from England who he becomes a journalist for this magazine that sends him to the Sahara to photograph the people, the culture, and the desert. And to do this, he takes this caravan from Morocco to Yemen. And along this journey, he has to learn a lot about the culture. He has to learn a lot about what it means to live in the desert, as well as how to adapt. And on this journey, he meets a lot of really interesting people. He learns from most of them. And one of the best books I would say compares to it in what you get out of it at the end would be The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Now, of course, nothing can compare to that book. That book is just brilliant. That book really inspired me in a way where I wanted to write something that would where you could get something out of it at the end, more than just a good story, where you could get a moral out of it. So it has a lot of adventure, has a lot of action to it, but it also has a moral in the center that you could get out of it if you're looking for it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, and you said you're a fan of historical fiction, things like that. Like, I mean, this genre, sounds like action and adventure and stuff like that. Maybe I missed it, but did you say what time period this is and things that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so it takes place just after World War I in the Sahara and a little bit in the Middle East. And I chose that time period not so I could focus on the war. There's actually no, not to spoil anything, but there's no scenes that take place while the war is still happening. I wanted to capture that time period because that is an event. World War I think, is one of the most underestimated events in history. It changed so much about how we view war, how we view PTSD, and a lot of really important topics. And it also set up World War II, which is another massive event. And I wanted to capture the time period where the dust clouds of World War I are just settling. What was it like to live there? Who what were people who had been impacted by the First World War, who had seen a lot of these horrible events, what were they like? And every time I ask myself that question, I am just compelled to answer it by imagining these people and trying to flesh them out on the page.
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Well,
what was it that drew you to this time period? Like, I mean, do you have some familial experience or some life experience that made this time period more interesting to you than maybe another?
Well, like I said earlier, I've just always been really drawn to history. So I'd read a lot of books on the First World War and learned a lot about it and that sort of thing. So it had been incubating in my mind for a while as a topic. But the piece of content that really pushed me over the edge was the 1962 film Lawrence of Arabia. When I saw that film, I swear I felt like I'd been plagiarized 60 years in the past. I felt like I had a protagonist in a time period that was just perfect for what I wanted to write. And I started doing more research on it. One of the biggest sources that I kept going back to was Dan Carlin's podcast. I think it was, Hardcore History Blueprint for Armageddon. One of the best podcasts.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's incredible.
Yeah, man, he's just great at really putting things in context. I think that now, when we have events like World War II and Vietnam, or at least in the West and in America, and we have everything going down in the Middle East, we tend to not think so much about World War One. When we think about it, we usually think of really quick film, people walking a little bit out of step, and that's about it. When you go back and actually look at it, it's a event that was truly revolutionary, and it's an amazing event to study. So, just as part of the research and in watching Lawrence of Arabia, did I find the love and interest for that period.
That's cool. Well, and I think that's kind of a unique take or a unique period to think about. Just like you said, what was life like in that little lull between the wars? You've just come off World War I, you're ramping up to World War II. What were those years like? For your average human.
Well, World War I ended in 1918, right? With Treaty of Versailles or something like that.
I believe so.
That time frame, just in history in general, is a unique time frame. Like the advent of the car, all the technology that's coming out of the end of World War I to World War II, and how what they learned in that short amount of time could affect the result of World War II is pretty. Just thinking of just technology, how much advanced in that time frame, and because of the war.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I mean, just like, I'm 20 years older than you, so I'm just thinking back on my education. But even like when I was growing up and going through school and everything, like World War II or World War I, was like a half a day discussion in history classes, and then we spent a lot of time in World War II. Everybody knows the thing about, I always mess it up and say Franz Ferdinand, but the King of Prussia or whatever, who was assassinated and sort of kicked off the war. And, like you get that little bit, and then you hear some, amazing and incredible in like the worst possible way, numbers of the number of people killed and things like that over the course of the war. But that's like the extent of my World War I knowledge. So I think that's probably the same of a lot of people my age. And so it's interesting to sort of zoom in on a topic like this. I can't help think of, but like the Indiana Jones books and stuff, when that was kind of, in the 20s and the 30s, with their pith helmets and everything running through Africa. And so it's kind of a cool, I guess, period of time, or maybe like an underserved or underexplored period of time to talk about. So I think that's pretty cool that you took some time to think about that.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm just, like I said, I'm super fascinated by that time period. Yeah.
So what kind of research did you do for the book? Like, other than Googling what was going on at the time, where did you pull your info from?
Initially, when I wrote the first draft by hand, I did no research because I didn't think of it becoming. I didn't keep the idea that other people would read it in my head at all. My idea was getting it down and just writing a story that I would enjoy. So I did no research initially, and in the process of writing the second draft, like I said, I listened to that podcast, and I read a few books. I've become a Wikipedia rat. I've learned how to go down a lot of different paths and sort of know what you need to research, and it's a bit of, I guess it was a bit of educated Googling, but I'd say that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess let's move into, talking about maybe the act of getting your imprint together and the reason for going that route. Like, have you pursued other labels or finding like literary agency, things like that? Or, was this plan sort of in your mind anyway meant to be self-published from the jump?
Okay. I went back and forth. My first idea was to go self-published, and then I thought, I could go traditional and just get my book everywhere. That would be awesome. And then as I started learning more about the traditional route, and you get paid about 10% of everything you make, and on top of it, you still have to do a good portion of your marketing anyway. And you got to have a platform that is noticeable for agents to know you. I thought, okay, it would be better for me just to go for it and publish it myself and start small scale. And then if it gets bigger, I could either partner with a traditional publishing company and go that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Instead of just going straight for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And of course, now we live in a time that's, at least technology is in a spot where you can really do this self-publishing pretty effectively. Like it's, back in the olden days or like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like this would have been hard to pull off. But nowadays, technology is at a spot, online platforms like Amazon and other independent booksellers are so easy to access at this point for your average author. It's pretty great time to be an author. It just, kind of circling around and talking about, how you had reached out to us and sort of, had been putting yourself out there. And then also the fact that you've started your own imprint and you're trying to really do all this thing yourself. Have you always been sort of entrepreneurial like this? Like, is this a characteristic that's, kind of just a part of your makeup?
I would say yes and no. I think it just comes down to what I set my mind to. If I have something committed in my head, I'll just commit to it 100%. So I would say yes, but it's not something that I'm just compelled to do when I have nothing to do. But I would say yeah, it is definitely a part of my my DNA. Yeah,
that's awesome. Do you have any influences in your life? I mean, supportive parents, supportive family, people who are helping to back this thing and giving you sort of the confidence you would need, especially as a young person, to take on an undertaking like this, to be, confident in yourself enough to really push this thing out on your own?
Well, I'd say that growing up, I kind of had instilled in me this. Well, I didn't instill it in me, but my parents instilled in me this idea of self-confidence. That if you're going to do it, just go for it. And, of course, it's great to have support from other people, but that, your support needs to come from yourself. So definitely, I've got support from everybody who's close to me, from my parents and my family, and they're very supportive of it and what I'm doing for sure. But I would say also it's just, I'm really grateful for the support that I have from them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, obviously very helpful. It's hard to do all this if you're fighting upstream. And,
yes.
Self-publishing a book is like no small thing. I mean, it basically goes through many of the same steps or has a lot of the same life cycle as a, normal business. I mean, you have a product to sell and you have to market it. And you have to do all these pieces and parts. And, it's no easy thing. So that's pretty great. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is, all this hard work, all this effort, it's entrepreneurial, but I think one of the things I most respect about you is, having started this book as such a young kid, at 13, 14 years old, and then sort of seeing it through, putting your head down and sticking to something is a characteristic that not a lot of people have. Some folks call it grit, other folks call it other things, but I mean, this idea of being able to really hammer on this idea and see it through, even if it took years. And as a young person, and not to stereotype all young people. So, sorry, shout out young people. But not everybody has the attention span to keep something like this going. It might start as a dream of youth, and then to see this thing happen, later after high school and in your 20s, 30s, whatever, like to actually see this thing happen, is something. I mean, is there anything you could maybe share with our audience about grit or sort of stick-to-itiveness, what it was inside you that drove you to stick with this thing like that?
Yeah. So like you were saying, this book, it did take a lot of grit. This book has been one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, but it's been one of the most rewarding. I wouldn't, even with the little technical difficulties, I wouldn't take one thing back. It's, it's just extremely meaningful. But when it comes to where that comes from, there's this one quote, I think it's by Les Brown. He says, the richest place in your city is not the bank, it's the graveyard. Everybody always has these ideas of what they could have done, ideas that they had that they never acted on, and to be honest, that terrifies me pretty strongly. So I guess it was just a preemptive attack on future regret and just wanting to live life and do something that would be awesome. So I guess
pretty
it's
self-aware for a 14-year-old kid.
Well, it didn't start out as that. To me, it was just I just wanted to write something cool. But the more, I guess that just kind of that bit I was saying about wanting to push past regret, I guess that just evolved as I went on.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, and I think that is a really good sign. I mean, it doesn't always have to be as dire as impending doom or death or whatever, but I think
I don't know. That's good motivation for me.
But I think there's a strong point in there that, this idea of circumventing regret before you have it. I kind of like that as a perspective for sort of running one's life, right? I mean, I think most people, and I certainly can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of people, carry regret later into life, and it's, for the simple reason, like you said, they had an idea and didn't follow through with it or whatever, and of course, we're all going to kick the bucket eventually, and so a lot of these people harbor these feelings well into adulthood and old age, and if you have the power, the ability, and in this case you had the drive, but technology's also facilitated your ability to do this. Why not circumvent this problem now? Instead of being a 42-year-old with 2 kids trying to find your way and going, God, I wish I'd have written that book.
Well, even that, I mean, like you just said for the very last thing, is like when you're 40 with kids, it's hard to notch out that time it takes to actually write a book like that. So getting an early start and getting the first one under your belts, big deal. It's like... It says a lot just to have that first one. It kind of says, oh, well, I did it before. I can do it again, So with that, what's next? What's like, are you going to do a series out of this? Or are you going to go into, World War II and how that affected,
Well, believe it or not, my original plan with the book was to use the bit that I'd cut off and make it a second book. So I was going to make it a 2-part series. And in the process of editing the first, I realized this book, it's much more suitable as a read if it's standalone. So I decided to make it standalone, and I'd considered the series idea. And I don't know, I've got a lot of ideas. I'm actually going to start writing another book pretty soon. I think I'm either going to dive into Vietnam. I think that's a time period that is very interesting to me.
Sure.
Or I might just go into World War II. Like you said, I don't know. One of those two I'm going to go into it. Maybe not focusing on the war aspect of it, but more of the time period.
Well, that seems to me to be, some of the more, I mean, there's obviously 1 million scholars and 1 million people who know everything about the wars. And, all the writing about the war, is out there. And not to say that there's not new things to learn or different ways to tell those stories, but the lives of the people that were being lived during the war, the people or during or after or before or just after or whatever the war, I think is, a gold mine for potential interesting stories. With your publishing imprint, is the grand plan just to publish your own books, or do you have thoughts about publishing for other people and things like that down the road?
I think if it's I think for now, it's just going to be me. But in the future, if things kick off to a point where I can bring other authors on board and help out the community, absolutely.
That's awesome. What would you say, I guess, then to, aspiring writers, people who are interested and, maybe they don't have the kind of familial support you had or the stick-to-itiveness, but they still have this nugget of an idea. Any tips, tricks, or anything like that for sticking with it, or even just process type pointers, like, start with a wireframe, start, whatever. I mean, like, are there anything you could offer to sort of help an aspiring writer get started writing?
Yeah. Well, considering that, this is my first book and, I'm just getting started, this would be some advice to take with a grain of salt. I'm not Stephen King or anything, but what
Give it a
helped
few
me out
years.
a lot,
Give it a few years.
yeah. What helped me out is I made a daily commitment to myself that I was going to do it no matter what. And by the time I'd finished that first draft, I had written it at every hour on the clock. Anytime from 2 or 3 in the morning to 2 or 3 p.m. Just because it was that important to me. So I would say if you're hesitant about it, if you have an idea and you're interested and you have the passion, when it's hot, I would say don't wait until you know how to do it. That paralyzes a lot of people, and just dive into it and you'll learn the lessons. If there's something you don't know, you're going to learn how to do it eventually.
Sure.
So I'd say just go for it and start writing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice. I think for a lot of people, they kind of just need that nudge or the affirmation that, it's okay. Like, you can go out and just write. Like, it doesn't really mean, you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be a Stephen King. You're allowed to go out and write and use this as a great form of expressing ideas. And there are a few platforms, I think, that are more sort of intimate to a person's life or a person's thought process than a book. You can really sit and put your whole guts out on this paper. And I think a lot of times we miss that. We try and develop relationships with people through platforms like social media and things like that. And, we're almost always left kind of wanting. The technology is just not quite there yet. You can get halfway, but you're not quite there. But in a book, maybe it's just because it can be longer form or whatever, but it really feels like you're capable of putting deeper, more heartfelt emotion into something like a book.
Well, when you're writing a book or something long form like that, you can get your initial concept out, go back and revisit it, edit it, revisit it again, edit it again, and really hone in on what you're trying to say versus a blog or something like that. I'll start writing on a blog and then get a third of the way done and never go back to refine it, never go back to finish it. It's, I don't know. I think like the process in writing a book over a blog is more in depth, and that you're committing for the long haul on it. So the research, everything you think of, could go back and kind of change this or that, or
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. I think just the level of intimacy you can have in a book. All the way down to the physical page flipping of a book, I think is just a deeper, more meaningful relationship with the thoughts and the well wishes or the meaning of the author. I think that's one of the more powerful things about books.
Yep. Well, cool.
Yeah, and to real quick as a final note to what you were saying, I had this thought the other day about what books a good book can do to you. It's a lot like poetry or music. It gives you a feeling that you can't describe in words, which is ironic because you're using words to do it. So I think a good book, to describe it, is it's a bunch of chapters, a bunch of paragraphs, a bunch of words that give you a feeling that's indescribable.
Sure.
And that's what I think is so amazing about books, is that they give us this indescribable feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. I think that's and also maybe a strong point to wrap this up on. So tell people where they can go and find your book or information about it leading up to its launch. Maybe a little bit about what the trajectory is. I mean, if you've maybe got some book signings or other podcasts scheduled, anything that people can do to sort of get involved in the initial launch of this thing and then sort of to carry it along.
Good question. So the book's going to be coming out here in a couple of weeks. So I'd say if you're going to be checking out a book to read, keep your eye on it. The name is Caravan by Adam DeCollibus. You can find it on Amazon for right now, but we're going to distribute to other stores here in the future. As far as how you could support, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I go live once a week on Wednesday. I talk about what I'm reading, and I answer some questions, and I get involved with my followers and whatnot. That's pretty much for now. That's the best things you could do.
That's great. So so to find Adam, just go to Instagram.com/Adam_DeCollibus. On Facebook, it's a really long thing, so just look him up, Facebook.com. And you can also find him at Twitter.com/Adam_DeCollibus as well. And so, anything else you want to say before we get out of here? Any other notes you'd like to make or other things you'd like to say, just mention about the book or anything like that?
You know what? Not so much about the book. I'd just like to take a moment to say thanks so much for having me on. I know at the beginning you were thanking me for my hustle and for getting out there, but I just want to say that this is more than just hustling and plugging. I had a great time talking with you guys, and this really means a lot to me. Thank you very,
That's great,
very much.
man. Well, yeah, thanks so much for doing this. And I mean, like I say, I mean, this, the applauding your hustle is, from us, I mean, if you're really familiar with our content, we really appreciate that. Both Mike and I are guys that have ground our way out to where we're at, and we've spent a lot of time and a lot of hours doing a lot of things. And we always appreciate somebody who approaches, life, business, whatever it is, with maximum effort. It's just, I think it's really important. And not to talk too much crap on your generation, but I mean, there's a lot of kids that miss that message. There's a lot of people that are sort of youngish, sort of millennial age groups that are having a hard time, really digging in and really doing that. There's a lot of entitlement and things like that out there. And as you've, I'm sure, discovered, and maybe you can comment on this, as you've discovered in the process of putting out this book and basically you're the man, you're the one responsible for this. There's nobody that can hand this book to you or hand your publishing imprint to you or jump all the hurdles at Amazon to get it published. This is on you. There's no entitlement to be had. And so I think that is a message that, I think resonates with a lot of younger people, but I think a lot of folks have a hard time applying it in their life and figuring out how to move forward. Maybe because parents were so kind and over-parented or whatever, and we're trying to keep people safe and cozy their whole lives, and so discomfort becomes hard to experience. But I think that's probably the thing that we sort of admire the most about you. I mean, it's terrific that you have this book and everything else coming out. It's awesome that you can put sort of a product behind your efforts. But more than anything, I think we're applauding the fact that you put out the effort, period.
Yeah.
So, wow. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Yeah. Without anything else, I guess we'll call it a wrap. Thanks for everybody that tuned in on the live stream. This episode will be out, in a week or two, and so hopefully it'll coincide with your book drop. Also, Adam, stay in touch with us and let us know when you have an official launch date, and we'll share that around as well. As we mentioned, you can follow Adam on Instagram and Twitter at Adam_DeCollibus. It's spelled DeCollibus, and you can also find him on Facebook. So I guess that's it. So thanks so much for doing the show, Adam. Grateful to have you on. And we'll do it again sometime when you're rich and famous. Woohoo!
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you.